What is so hard about allowing teachers and school staff to carry a gun in school? What's so hard about that? I don't get it. I feel the need to ask that question because I've heard some people, even some people who are otherwise pro gun, make comments indicating that they're weary about allowing teachers to carry a gun in school, or they're afraid to let teachers carry a gun in school. And I don't get it. And for the sake of time in this video, let's assume you live in a state that requires a permit to carry a gun. And let's consider current federal law. Under current federal law, the Gun-Free School Zones Act, the only way someone can legally carry a gun into a school is if they are issued a valid carry permit from the state they reside in, and the school they're going into is in the state they reside in, and the state they reside in allows permit holders to carry a gun into a school or does not have a law or regulations against permit holders carrying a gun into that school. That is the only way. So say you have a teacher or teachers with a carry permit, and there are teachers out there with a carry permit or that have carry permits. And say that same teacher carries in most places they go outside of school, outside of work. I'm sure that same teacher, as well as other people who have carry permits, carry a gun in other places your kids go, whether it be stores, restaurants, parks, ice cream shops, whatever. Why do you feel safe or okay with that same teacher, as well as other people, having a gun around your children in those locations, yet somehow feel unsafe about it as soon as that teacher walks through the doors of a school? That doesn't make sense to me. That's not consistent. What's the difference? The only differences I can think of is that the school is known for being a gun-free school or a gun-free zone in recent history. Virtually every pro-gun person I've ever talked to has acknowledged that gun-free zones do not work. So why do some of you out there seem to forget this fact when it comes to schools? Again, what's the difference? Now, in regards to differences, I can see some very few, very minor additional regulations being required. For example, I could see giving the teachers and school staff, while on the clock on school grounds, the option to either conceal the gun on their person or the option to have it concealed in a lockbox or a safe somewhere that is under constant adult supervision from a responsible adult, like another teacher, administrative staff, principal, SRO, whoever, right? So I can see that, and that is reasonable and it's constitutional because it'd be more of a regulation while on the clock more so than dictating how someone carries when they're off in their free time. And I see this being reasonable because the whole purpose of public schools are supposed to be to educate our children. Now, how well of a job they do of that in this day and age is another topic. So you don't want it to be disruptive to the classroom environment, whether it be just kids asking questions about it or whatever. The second reason being is that when it comes to schools, most of the culprits have been former or current students. So you don't want a mass murderer who plans on attacking a school to have prior knowledge of what teachers are carrying a gun and which ones are not. You don't want them to have that information. So I can see that being a reasonable regulation. I've heard some people mention additional training for teachers. I don't see it quite being necessary for the same reasons I just said earlier. What's the difference? That teacher can carry a gun in all those other places with nothing but their permit and the training that was or was not required to get that carry permit, depending on the state. And they're trusted to safely carry that gun and respond with it in all those other places where there's lots of people. What's any different about a school? I'm going to be just as upset. I would be just as upset if my kid got hit by a stray bullet at a store as I would be at a school. Either way, I don't want it happening. But Sure, if you wanted to help it be a little bit safer, I could understand, since as part of their work requirements, to maybe have them undergo a one-time active shooter tailored class kind of tailored to responding to shooting at an active shooter in a crowded environment. Sure, I can see that. But they don't need to be treated like law enforcement officers qualifying at a range within service every year. They're still teachers. They're not law enforcement officers. So they don't need to be put through that, burden and excessive, regulations where you have them doing that. The goal is that they will hopefully never have to use the gun, but to still be proficient with it. And I'm sure most teachers who carry are going to go to the range and maintain their proficiency to some degree or another. But they don't need to be placed with the burden, and then you get funding issues and making them do this yearly training like a law enforcement department would do. But outside of that, I don't see any other additional regulations or requirements being necessary for school staff and teachers. But parents should also be allowed to carry at school without any kind of additional regulations whatsoever, because they're just going to be there dropping off their kid, picking them up, maybe going to an extracurricular activity or an after-school event. So they should definitely be allowed to carry there. And what's the purpose of prohibiting it? If a parent is going to do something stupid or evil or crazy with a gun, like with every other criminal, that sign on the door is not going to stop them. The law is not going to stop them. The only thing stopping them from doing so is a lack of desire or lack of intent. The only people who will abide by those things are the parents who do not intend on harming anyone to begin with. And same thing for teachers. If a teacher wants to harm a student, the sign on the door nor the law is stopping the teacher. It's a lack of desire, a lack of intent. Sure, there are some teachers out there that are crazy, but they're generally the far left anti-gun types to begin with, the ones I've seen. And again, even if they are, the only thing that's stopping them is them not deciding to do it, because that's it. They're still, regardless of whether or not teachers could carry in school, if they hurt a student, they're still going to lose their job. Depending on the severity, they're most likely going to be going to jail. So, or prison, or executed, even if they are murdering people. So, it doesn't make sense. It's not consistent. Gun-free zones do not work. Allow teachers to carry, school staff to carry, parents to carry. Obviously not the students, but allow the teachers and parents and school staff to carry. But what is so hard about it is that you have these legislators who are too weak-kneed, even supposed Republicans and supposed conservatives who claim to support the Second Amendment, get weak-kneed and they're like, well, I just don't feel right about that, don't feel good about it. So what do we really have to lose? It's not working the way it is now. Mass murderers are murdering innocent children in schools that are gun-free zones. Why not try something different? We only have something to gain. So let's stop allowing our children to be sitting ducks, to be defenseless. Let's allow teachers who want to be armed.